Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Master. Now I haven't done a review in a while because I've been replacing it with Versus Movie Bout, but I wanted to make an exclusive review for this show, The Amazing Digital Circus. Now this show is very popular, the most popular indie show, and as you've been noticing, a lot of my videos have been inspired by the episodes lately, and I've been, adding more Digital Circus content with the plushies and stuff, and that's because, so back in December, actually I would say October, I seen episode 3 came out, but I haven't, and I was kind of curious to check it out, but I didn't really, and I just continued making my video, because I was making my video while that came out. But then when episode 4 came out, I was actually interested in it, because it was about fast food. So, I was like, why don't I start from the pilot episode and watch all the way until episode 4? And I did, and my watch was quite interesting. My opinions have changed a lot about these episodes lately, and I wanted to go into it like everyone else, because I do really like this show now. I actually think every episode's nearly perfect. These episodes are so well made, and I can see why indie animation's getting very popular. Now, I did watch a few other indie shows, but I haven't quite liked them as much as I did with Digital Circus. So, let me go over them. Now, The Amazing Digital Circus is a show created by a company named Werid. They also make a channel named SMG4, which I watched a few of those videos, and I haven't really gotten into it, but I thought some of them were very funny. So anyways, Glitch is basically this channel that makes a bunch of indie shows like Murder Drones and Gaslight District, and yes, I never seen Murder Drones. I know all of you are gonna go nuts and unsubscribe, but yes, I never saw it. I did see Gaslight District, and it was a very great show, but it definitely had its problems, like how the pacing was way too fast and stuff. But I did really like it, and I hope it does get a second episode. But looking at its views, I'm not sure about that. But hey, I really hope it does and stuff. So, yeah, so Glitch doesn't just focus on the views, they also focus on their merch, because that's how they get funded to make more episodes. So, So, that's basically what The Amazing Digital Circus is, from. And then the show's about these characters that get stuck in a virtual world named The Amazing Digital Circus. Jax, Kane, Tommy, Subal, Bubble, Kaner, and Aragatha and Gingle. They're all basically stuck there. Well, Kane is the creator, and Bubble is like his partner, and basically the characters have to be stuck there. Basically, they go on all these adventures, but of course the circus has some dark secrets, like how when you go insane, you get attracted, which is basically death in Digital Circus. So yeah, but I'll go more into it once I talk about the episodes, which I will start right now. So yeah, that was me. Ha ha. I'm trying to do a review right now. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm gonna start doing that right now. So here's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna give each episode its own review, and then once I'm done reviewing that episode, I'll immediately go on to the next episode. So this video is gonna be quite long. So grab your popcorn, grab your soda. I've been wanting to do this video, but I wanted episode 5 to come out first, and of course, when episode 6 comes out, I'll give its own review. Same with episode 7, 8, and 9, because it's probably not going to get season 2. So, yeah, but I'll give the rest of the episodes its own video and stuff. So, but in this video, I'm going to review all 5. So, and of course, I'll rank them at the end, and then I'll give you an official release date for episode 6. Well, my prediction. So, for ado, let's get started. The episode starts off with a title card, goes into full HD, and then we get Kane introducing himself with a catchy-ass theme song. When you listen to this song will get stuck in your head, and it definitely gets stuck in my head all the time, every single time I watch this episode. But this wasn't gonna be the original song. Fun fact, did you know Gooseworx and Albert, sorry I can't pronounce your last name right, but basically they had an original theme song concept for this intro here. I'll play it right here, at least a little bit. While this theme was also really catchy, and this one actually gets more stuck in my head than this one, I do think it was a good choice to replace with this one. Now, apparently the main reason why they replaced it was because this version fits the show much better, which I do agree on. But I do hope they do play it again in the future, the original one, like in like episode 6, 7, or something like that, since the show's supposed to take a really dark turn after episode 6, so maybe episode 5, so maybe when a new member comes in, they can play this theme. But yeah, I definitely prefer this one better, since it fits the pilot episode definitely much better in terms of its theme. And then we meet all the characters, just kind of talk to each other, and Pomni is just all confused and stuff, and, you know, she doesn't like it. Kane tells Pomni that she can't curse, doesn't matter how much she tries, she can't, and none of the other characters either, so don't worry kids, you're safe in terms of the cursing. And then Jax refused that she can't leave.
You can't. We've been stuck here for years. Old Kinger over there supposedly been here the longest.
Oh, did someone say something about an insect collection?
And then Pomni goes nuts thinking it's a dream. Then Kane shows Pomni the circus in a very interesting way. Then they come back, and then King, gives Pomni a name because she forgets, which the first name was definitely incredible and should have been her name.
What do you think of...
Well, instead of it being Static, it rounds up being Pomni instead, which is also a very good name for this clown, but her name should have been Static.
We should have a brand new adventure for our new member.
Then Kane plans a trip called Gather the Goinks, where they gotta catch the Goinks because they like to steal stuff. This is the first adventure we ever get in the series, and it's just in the circus, which is a good way to start because, we gotta, start something somewhere instead of just right away.
Oh no, they killed Zubul. Anyway, you guys wanna go get something to eat?
Jax decides to split up, so they go check on Cosmo, Jax, Ragava, and Pomni. Well, Gingo and Zubul, Gingo and Kaner decide to, go and save Zubul. I said Gingo and Zubul because that theme song still stuck in my head like this. And then they explain more about the attractive monster. By the way, I won't give too much away since I want you guys to go see this show for yourself. So, I'll just give you guys minor spoilers. At least in the first episode. The rest of the episodes will be all spoilers. Then they go to Cosmo's room. Turns out he's abstracted, which is definitely an incredible way to go out. You're just this thing. Then Ragava gets all glitchy. Then Pomni's hand get all glitchy, so she can't save Ragava, so she's got no choice but to run away. Then Jax continues to be a bully and throws Kaner and Gangle down the hole. Now we get to the Goink Queen, which definitely doesn't look ugly at all. Then Ragava goes Ragava tells Pomni to go and find Kane so he can save her. Quick detail, so fun fact, when Ragava mentions Kane, Pomni's hand stops glitching, so I'm not sure if it's just an animation error or if it's hiding something dark, but hey, maybe we'll find out in the future why. Then she goes through all doors with some very interesting things, like meeting Dr. Football. Then they finally find Zubul just getting jungled around by the Goinks, which Zubul is very happy about. Jax says it's rude and he doesn't want to help because he's Jax, so they play both scissors, but Kaner runs anyway for some reason, I don't even know why. But since Kaner's hands are attached, well...
Oh! Hey! Kaner, you mother...
Then Pomni, after running around, finds an exit, which turns out to be very real, and definitely not a scam at all. Then Pomni goes nuts from there being so much exit doors, which, tries are very insane, and then the door disappears, meaning that no one can save her.
This is dumb and weird.
Then the attracted Cosmo goes, beat the Goinks Queen up, and then they basically just go on the escalator. Jax, it's a very great role model with pushing Gangle.
Wait, Pomni's not even here? Wasn't this whole thing for her?
Be quiet. I can't hear the escalator.
Then Pomni goes into the void, which Kane mentions this earlier not to go into, which it seems like if you go into the void for too long, you could possibly go insane or just subtract, or maybe this is a way to escape, who knows. So instead of having a funeral for Cosmo, everyone comes back and just has dinner. And it looks very delicious and definitely not looking gamey food and low quality at all. Also, can anyone explain to me what that is? Is that like a fish or something? And then Bommy is having a great time in the circus and definitely not going insane. And then we get something a bit interesting. The voice soon sound and we're back in the same office from earlier. Then the title card plays and that's the episode. Overall, I think this is a fantastic introduction to the series. It lets us get to know the characters like Shax, Ragafa, Pomni, Kaner, Subal, and Gingle. I think it adds decent enough character development, especially on Shax, Ragafa, and Pomni especially. It does a pretty solid job on introducing the digital circus world and, how it's this wacky, goofy place with a bunch of, things to do. It basically shows us a couple secrets of the circus, like how attraction can happen when you go insane. And overall, it just does a good job of, introducing everything to the show. It gets you all in for the series and has you wanted to watch more episodes, which I think is great. It's definitely one of the best pilot episodes. Usually the first episodes are usually a bit more awkward than the other ones, but I do think this one does a really nice job. Now for my nitpicks. To be honest, I don't really have any, but there's definitely a few to be noticed. Now, since this episode was a pilot, and it's in a runtime of 25 minutes, they had to kind of rush everything in terms of introducing characters, introducing the world, and basically a bunch of other stuff. So that means there was some characters out there that didn't get as much screen time as others. Like Ragafa, Pomni, and Shax got a bunch of character development and had us get used to them. But then characters like Subal, Gingle, and Kaner didn't really get too much screen time, and we didn't really get to know too much about them outside of Gingle's max breaking, Kaner's unstable, and Subal was just grumpy. I do also think the pacing is a bit too fast at times because compared to the other episodes that has better pacing, this one is a bit too fast and you will definitely have to watch it quite a few times, like 3 or 4 times, to understand what the heck is even going on. Like me, you're probably going to watch this episode the first time and then be very confused as heck, so you're definitely going to watch this episode a few times to really understand. And also, my last nitpick is I wish we got a bit more time with the Going Queen, because it was one of the main features of this episode, and we didn't really get too much time in the cave. But outside of that, I think everything else is perfect about this episode. Even if the animation doesn't look as good as the other episodes, I still think it's the best looking indie show still to this day, with its colorful characters, very well designed, and also, it's just appealing to basically all ages. The characters are great too. My favorite is Shax, then Pomni, and then I like Ragafa the third. But all the characters are great. I think all of them are really good. Even the ones that don't get that much screen time, like Bubble, are really good. And I do also like the Going Queen. But also this show, you can tell it's pretty unsettling, with the confused nature of when characters first enter, and also abstraction. I will say, even though it was a cool idea for abstraction, I did wish we got one flashback with Cosmo. I think it would have been cooler to just see like at least one flashback. But hey, I hope we get one in the future, because if I had to nitpick pretty much all the episodes, maybe outside of episode 4 and 5 and 3, like I'm just talking about the first 2. If I had to nitpick both the first 2 episodes, is that I wish Cosmo got a backstory or some flashback, because we should definitely get to know Cosmo a bit more, especially that it's just so nice. He's just an abstracted monster now. We got like no flashback of him whatsoever. But overall, despite its a little nitpicks there and there, it's definitely the best pilot indie show could ever get. And overall, I would probably give this episode around a 9.8. And the nitpicks drop it from it being a 10, but I think this episode's nearly perfect. If a few things were just fixed and stuff, I felt like this episode could have been perfect. I did hear that Gooseworx said that if she could fix anything about this episode, it's just the writing a bit, which I do think makes sense. Maybe give Cosmo a flashback. But overall, this episode is really great. 9.8 out of 10. After a nearly 7-month wait, we finally got the second episode, which honestly, most pilot episodes take about a year or 2, or maybe even 3 years to come out, but this one only took 7 months, which is a pretty short wait for a second episode of an indie show. But anyways, this episode opens up with Pomni having a nightmare about her getting abstracted. And then we get this weird scene of Kane, Shax, and Ragamuffin just looking down at her and just saying bye and waving off. Now, this scene is weird because it already gives us a little suspect about Ragamuffin. It makes sense for Kane and Shax to be here watching her down, but why is Ragamuffin just here kind of just laughing it off and stuff? This is kind of where you start to get a little sus about Ragamuffin, that she could maybe, just maybe, have a dark side to her. She seemed to be really nice in the pilot episode, but just this one scene gives us a little suspicion that Ragamuffin could have a pretty dark side. But we will dive deep into that in one of the later episodes. Anyways, Pomni wakes up from bed looking all great, and Ragamuffin rings the doorbell. Then she apologizes to Pomni for, leaving her behind, which, she didn't even have to apologize for some reason. Then Kane introduces the new adventure about Candy Carrier Chaos, where they basically fits at Candy Kingdom and looks all fun and colorful, and it's going to be sticky. And then Subo doesn't want to go on it, so unfortunately, if you were expecting Subo to get more screen time in this episode, you're definitely wrong. Then we get introduced to the Candy Kingdom world.
Look, Pomni, we're already friends with the princess.
I'm not a child, you don't have to hype me up.
So then the queen tells them to go after the bandits, being Gummy Goo and his friends, and to stop them by giving them a truck. Shax takes the horn for some reason, which it makes sense, and Gingo starts driving the truck. Then we get introduced to Gummy Goo and his friends, which I don't even know his other friend's name, but they are great characters. Like, seriously, like Danny says when he reacted to this episode, I would have these crocodile gummies in real life. They look so delicious. Then the chase starts, and Shax causes the chaos by throwing Pomni off to a moving truck, and he looks happy about that. And then she just trudges through and gets stuck between two trucks, and Shax just starts becoming a bully. So they are going to fight with this truck, and Shax causes more chaos by pointing a shoe cannon at her, which only makes the chase worse, as it already is bad. Then Shax starts making things worse by threatening Gingo about this figurine thing, which we'll get into a bit later once we get to episode 5. Minor spoiler. Then it makes Gingo and goes insane, and she slams right into them as Shax promises or tells her. Then this scene happens where Ragamuffin gets pointed into a bunch of spikes, which basically confirms that these characters are immortal, which means all these characters are basically dead. And the trucks get separated, so Shax, Gingo, Ragamuffin, and Kaner get all swam into shock with water or lava. Then Pomni's truck witches with Gummy Goos. And then the rest of the crocodiles just fly away, but then Gummy Goo goes into this out-of-bound area. This area is very creepy and unsettling, and it definitely has this episode stand out. Then Gummy Goo discovers that he's an NPC by seeing himself T-posing as a model for this adventure, kind of like what they use in games. So then he figures out. He gets all depressed and sad, and especially the fact that he apparently has a mom, which he mentioned earlier, and then he just freaks out because he doesn't even know if she had a face or not, or if she's human. I hope we get backstory on him in one of the episodes. While the other characters are just stuck in a lava, just sitting in the truck, which is definitely more peaceful than what Pomni and Gummy Goo are going through. At least they're actually on land. Then this lava monster thing comes up, which, by the way, is a great character and also pretty creepy and, funny, but pretty unsettling. Especially since candy corn is his teeth. Yuck. I actually hate candy corn. Like everything else in the world. Well, like everyone else in the world. Then the crocodiles land, and they just meet up with each other. Then we get a pretty long scene with Gummy Goo explaining to Pomni that he's nothing and just created as an enemy just to be defeated and forgotten, which is a very good and emotional scene and adds a lot of character to both Pomni and Gummy Goo. It's actually a really sweet scene, and we will get many more of these long talking emotional scenes in the future episodes. And then since this Candy Kingdom is so glitchy and stuff, Gummy Goo and Pomni take the advantage of making these things glitch, like a glitch in the truck and stuff, to have them blast into the air. And then Gummy Goo starts getting happy once, and because now he's happy that because Pomni helped him and told him he can come back to the circus with the rest of the game. Then they all meet up again, meeting each other. And then the rest of the game with a new member, Gummy Goo, comes back to the circus.
So this is the circus, huh? I'm gonna get used to this.
Oh, looks like one of these guys made it through.
Wait, what?
So then Kane goes and drinks some water, because water's good for you. So instead of having a funeral for Gummy Goo, they wound up having a funeral for Cosmo instead. So they honor their memories of Cosmo, and even Pomni, I guess, having a memory with Cosmo saving her from the abstracted world, I guess. I mean, I'm still a bit confused by that flashback, but you know what, it's fine. Maybe we'll get more explanation about it in the future episodes. And then the episode comes to a conclusion. Overall, I thought this episode was really good, but I thought it was a bit worse than the first episode. But I'll quickly go through the positives and also the nitpicks I had. I don't think this episode really has any negatives, but there's definitely some things they could have fixed here. First of all, if you can tell, the animation is an improvement. It looks a bit more like expression. The characters look much better, and also it just looks more like vibrant and colorful. And it's basically just the first episode's look just upgraded to a more like realistic, higher quality, which I do appreciate. Since even though the first episode's animation was good, this one's is definitely better. I definitely also thought Gummy Goo was a very solid new character. He has a great design. And I thought once he went down into the out balance, it added a lot to his character. And I think having them develop his character was a really good idea. Because, well, we already thought Gummy Goo was a good character, but instead of just having him be a bad guy, we actually got to learn basically his, pretty good side, and it's very emotional to see what he's going through. He's the only NPC that recognizes that all he is just something to be destroyed and forgotten once the heroes beat the Candy Kingdom. But instead of Pomni destroying him, she understands. And it quickly becomes a very emotional, long, and great scene. I did think Gummy Goo was a great character. Although I did think killing off Gummy Goo was a good idea, because he's definitely a one-episode character, and if we kept him as a new member, it would be pretty awkward for the series, so I think it was a good idea to get rid of him, and stuff. The soundtrack was also very good. The first episode's soundtrack was also really good, which I did forget to mention in my last segment, and I also think this episode keeps the continuation of having really good soundtrack. I also did forget to mention in my last segment, but I could say this for pretty much all the episodes, same with the soundtrack. The comedy is very good. It's really funny, outstanding, and this show does a really good job of giving us a bunch of very funny moments, but also giving us a bunch of character development. And Pomni got a lot of screen time, which I did appreciate since it adds a lot more to her character. And from each episode onwards, she continues to like the circus much better. And this episode starts off with having us basically being more hopeful for Pomni that she's going to be okay in this cursed circus. But now it's time to get on to the complaints I have about this episode, because there is quite a few. I wouldn't call it a negative, but they definitely ruined the episode a bit. First of all, the animation. Even though I did put this in the positive section, the animation in this episode is still very inconsistent. Sometimes the episode will look really good, like in this opening scene here. But I feel like every scene in the Candy Kingdom don't look all that good. I think the Candy Kingdom is still very empty looking, and it just doesn't match the characters, in my opinion. Like, I think this scene right here, it doesn't look as good as it does in the as the other scenes in the circus and in the void. I mean, out of bounds area. Another problem, in my opinion, was that I felt like it didn't really add on too much to the characters, except for Pomni. She did get a lot of character development, same with Gummy Goo, but I feel like the rest of the characters didn't really get that much more development. Like, Jax is Jax from the first episode, Ragafa is Ragafa from the first episode, and moved to the second episode, and all the other stuff. We didn't really get to learn anything new about them. Jax is the bully, Ragafa is the nice one, Kaner is the unstable one, Gingo is the Max one, which the Max controls her emotions, and Subu just doesn't want to go on the adventures. And I felt like this episode could have had a couple more scenes to add development to these characters. But I get it, they really wanted to focus on Gummy Goo and Pomni, which is totally fine. I just wish we got a couple more scenes with Jax, Ragafa, Kaner, and Subu and Gangle. And finally, the pacing. Unlike the first episode that went by way too fast, this episode's pacing is inconsistent like the animation. Some parts of this episode go by really fast, like the opening and the truck scene, but then once you get to Gummy Goo going to the out of bounds area, even though it's a great scene, I definitely feel like it goes on for a bit too long and could have been a few minutes shorter, like maybe a minute or two shorter. This scene definitely slows down the pace in a lot, and if it wasn't for this scene, this episode would have been like 12 minutes long. So this is why this episode is slightly longer as the others, because like the third longest in the series, because of the awkward pacing issues. And that's why I feel like it's a problem. That I feel like the out of bounds area gets way too much screen time and not enough screen time for the other characters. And I felt like what they should have done is replace some of the out of bounds scenes with maybe some of the other scenes for the characters, or maybe they could have made this episode slightly longer by giving this episode to maybe adding 2 more minutes to this episode. If they just added like 2 more minutes to like the scenes with Jackson and Ragafa and stuff, I felt like this episode would have been better. So overall, while this episode is really good, it's definitely probably my least favorite of the series. Like, this is still a really good episode. It's still like almost a 10. It's just not as good as the others. I give it overall a 9.3 out of 10. It's a really great episode and definitely was worth the wait, but it definitely has its issues with the pacing, the animation, and also just character development alone. It didn't really add that much to the series in my opinion, so overall, I'm going to give this episode 9.3 out of 10. After a 5-month wait, we finally got another episode of the Amazing Digital Circus for the Halloween season, being episode 3, The Mystery of Millenhall Manor. This episode starts off with the gang just kind of holding their breaths and stuff, and they get different powers. For Pomni, when she holds her breath, the color of her face changes from blue to pinkish to yellow and all types of colors. Like, Kaner starts glowing, Ragafa's hair noodles stick up, Kangaroo's max spin, and Subo's limbs straighten up. But then Kane interrupts again, and then introduces a new adventure named The Mystery of Millenhall Manor, this episode's title. They're going to be apparently going to a haunted mansion, and, just dealing with very creepy stuff for the Halloween season, which is perfect timing. This episode releases on October 4th, which means it was the perfect time to do an episode like this. And then Subu just runs away again, which makes Kane pretty aggravated. Fun fact, this is what Bubble actually said.
I can't wait for all the children in the audience to get horrible nightmares from the monster.
And then King sends them to the haunted mansion, and everyone looks pretty scared. Ragafa tries to calm Pomni down, and that's a nice mini conversation. Then Jax just, scares her, and Jax is in his classic style, which is the wrong time because everyone's already scared by this creepy place. Then they have to pick between the not scary door and the very scary door. Definitely not a reference to it. Then Kaner and Pomni, which has her eyes out for her being scared, get stuck into the scary door. Then Kane sends Subo, and Kane tells her that she's going to have a therapy section with him. So finally we get more screen time with Subo. So yay, Subo fans, you finally get your screen time. Subo tells Kane of how much she doesn't like the adventures, and same with all the other characters. Then we get back to Kaner and Pomni being stuck in this basement sort of place with a bunch of weird and creepy statues. Then they try to figure out a way out until the radio speaker guy comes on. He tells them that he has to kill the angel and stuff, and basically that's the way of getting out. Then we get I hate when ads interrupt YouTube videos. As I was saying, we get a very long scene with Kaner and Pomni in the dark, one of my biggest fears, and then... Which, by the way, is definitely the scariest pain out of any TADC episode, which is very scary. Then Pomni tries to use the key she found earlier to unlock the elevator. Then after grabbing Kaner, they get in the elevator, but instead of going back up, they go all the way down. Then we get back to the therapy section with Kane and Supo, and Supo explained to him why herself or any of the characters hate the adventures. And then Supo tells Kane she doesn't like how she looks because of her removable body parts. So Kane tries to help out by giving her options to change her parts, but it doesn't obviously work because she's been keep changing them every day. Fun fact, did you know in every episode she has different parts? I will show you the images on screen. So, yeah, so this is a perfect example and actually a little Easter egg. Then she explains to Kane why none of the characters like the adventure. And then this happens.
That'd be...
Fender back down deep. So then the radio comes back on, telling them to grab the gun and everything. So they do.
Please don't come alive.
Okay, I won't.
Then this creepy thing comes out, and then the angel comes back again, very scary. And it turns out Kaner might be a very good shotgun shooter because he literally shoots both of them perfectly with 2 bullets, so that's pretty cool. Maybe Kaner's backstory was that he used to be a professional gun shooter. But hey, who knows, since he has very bad memory and literally forgets everything that happened. And then the speaker tells them, betrays them, telling them that killing the angel god was very bad, or one of angel's god, and basically sends them to hell. And then we cut to Ragatha and Gingo talking to Milhouse, and it looks like they're having a great time compared to Kaner and Pomni. They got Shax all tied up because he went out of control, which is a good thing. I think it's a good thing they kept Shax more quiet because some people said Shax ruined episode 2. Then King tells them they completed the adventure, but they have to wait for Pomni and Kaner to finish their, very scary adventure. And Shax definitely looks happy to wait. Then Pomni and Kaner are basically stuck in hell and try to find a way to escape. Kane finds a stairway, but they can't get through the thing without being possessed. Then Kaner was able to get away with saying the word damn without it being, censored, which is a pretty cool thing. And the only time cursing was not censored. But possessed Pomni, the demon, tells Kaner about how his wife is doing, which will be very important in like 2 seconds. Then Kaner explains the backstory of his wife, which is very incredible, of how she attracted, and is very emotional and sad. It basically made Kaner the way he is, just mentally unstable and insane. So after a very emotional talk, they walk together by holding their breaths. And then, of course, like mentioned earlier, Kaner starts glowing, and they hold their breath for the whole way, then finally make it to the stairway. Then they meet back up, and then, unfortunately, Kane kind of already forgets that, Pomni was brave, but that makes sense because he forgets everything. Then Pomni tells Ragatha, thank you for being a very nice person to Pomni, and she just appreciated it. This scene gives me a theory that Raghafa might be very underappreciated. She's being very nice to everybody, but she's never really gotten a thank you or anything. And she's very happy to hear this for the first time. Then after a very quick and short talk, they make it back to the circus.
And now I'm just starting to wonder if the Wild West was even a real direction at all.
Jack asks Pomni if Kaner was a nutcase. Well, asks her how it was to be with a nutcase, and Pomni gives a positive response, and Jax didn't like that. And then the episode is finally over. Overall, this is definitely my favorite episode so far, so I'll get into the positive. One, the animation is a very big improvement, but unlike the last episode, which its animation quality was inconsistent, this episode's animation looks amazing throughout the whole episode, and it's very consistent with scenes where all the animation looks incredible. So that's definitely a nice fix. The soundtrack continues to be really good. And I also thought the Haunted Mansion setting was very good for the Halloween time. I like how this episode references some horror games like Poppy Playtime and Doors. Those games I really like, so it was cool to see the Amazing Digital Circus add a little reference to them. Another thing I really liked about this episode was character development. Not only did we get a lot of character development on Pomni, her liking the circus more and more as episodes go by, but we also got a lot of character development for both Kaner and Subal. We finally got to find out Subal doesn't like going on the adventures and she doesn't like her body parts. And also, it's very great how we got to learn Kaner's backstory about his life and everything and the way he became. Also, the pacing was phenomenal. Even though this episode was not as long as episode 1 or 2, it didn't need to be. The episode is very well paced. And unlike the second episode where the Gummy Goose and Pomni scene lasted way too long, the Kaner and Pomni scene was just perfect. It was emotional, and it lasted at a good time, only being probably around 4 minutes. It was perfect pacing, and the rest of the episode does a good job at pacing itself. With not parts being too fast, not parts being too slow, it's just perfect. And finally, I thought the ending was beautiful. It was very emotional and very climatic. I could definitely see why some people almost cried during this scene. And I think the music was incredible. This episode definitely has the best soundtrack of the show so far. The new Ghost and Monster was also really well designed with creepiness, but also looked very cool. Now, do I have any nitpicks with this episode? Well, not really, but I do have a few minor adjustments. First of all, I felt like we could have gotten more screen time with Jax, Raghafa, and Gangle. I felt like compared to the rest of the characters, Raghafa, Gangle, and Jax were very underdeveloped. And the fact this episode is called Mildenhall Manor in the title, I think it's very weird how Mildenhall Manor only got like 50 seconds of screen time. I felt like we could have added maybe 3 more scenes of them. I get that this episode really wanted to focus on Kaner and Subal, but maybe we could have gotten a scene or 2 of Raghafa, Gangle, and Jax, maybe how they tied them up, or maybe just an extra scene with Mildenhall Manor. I also thought the scene where Pomni and Kaner were in the dark lasted way too long. I felt like the scene could have been shortened out to like 20 seconds instead of a whole minute. So that's definitely a pacing problem right there. But those are just minor nitpicks. And honestly, they don't even bother me while watching the episode. It could have just been shorter, or they could have just had more screen time. But overall, I think this episode is phenomenal. It's like perfect in every way. There's literally like no nitpicks. The episode has great pacing, animation, soundtrack, and great character development on characters we especially needed to know more, like Subal and Kaner. And I think this episode actually has plot to the show on like episode 2, which was just kind of like the most filler episode of all of them. It's not a filler episode, but it definitely feels like it the most. So overall, I'm going to give this episode a perfect 10 out of 10. Episode 4 starts off with Raghafa and Gangle playing some classic old baseball. Then Jax, as usual, bullies Gangle by hitting him right in the face with his baseball bat, and it causes his max to break. I do feel like this is the first scene where they kind of showed a soft side to Jax, because I don't think he actually meant to hit Gangle right in the face. You can tell, but we'll get into that in the next and final episode. And then Subal gives him a max that will never break, and it's made out of plastic. It's a max that's supposed to make him happy, and Gangle likes it. And then, of course, Kane interrupts with an adventure idea.
No.
Kane introduces his adventure called The Curse of the Finely Psychopath Butcher. But then everyone admits they don't like the adventure because they already had enough horror in the last episode. So they tell Kane the suggestion box which he's forgotten about. And after all, Kane picks Gingle's section where they work at a fast food restaurant called Spudsy's. And not McDonald's, it's Spudsy's. And then Subo tells Kane she doesn't want to go on the adventure, so Kane tells Kane he will not go on the adventure, but have Subo go on it instead, which Kane thinks that's a great idea. Subo is mad, but then Kane just sends her down right to the bottom, forcing her to go on the adventure. Finally! Subo fans get me happy. Also, Gingle admits he worked at a fast food place once, so that means we got a bit more character backstory. So, Gingle starts to stay off, and everyone does, but of course Jax is a maniac and just becomes a bully and throws Ragfa into the deep fryer. Then Gingle calls Kane, telling him to punish the customers if they do anything naughty. Then they start off with breakfast. And then throughout, they get a customer named Ordsman, which he will be in the next episode. Well, kinda. It's a evil clone, so minor spoiler. Ragapa tells Pomni from the previous adventure, and they take his order, even if we don't understand his language. Then Gingle takes advantage and keeps telling Shax not to do his naughty things. It seems like Gingle's actually taking revenge on him from the previous episodes. Then Mannequin asks Pomni for a stupid burger with the stupid sauce. But then, unfortunately, Ragapa gets sauce on her eye, which causes her to get very creepy digital hallucinations. Which basically makes her drunk for the rest of the episode. Then we have a pretty calm scene between Shax and Subo, and this is kind of another scene showing Shax's more soft side, because he wouldn't talk to Subo like this before in episodes 1, 2, or 3. Then Gummy Gook and his crew come, and it turns out they can't remember Pomni due to Kane killing all three of them in episode 2. So things get very awkward with Pomni. And then this is where we start to see just things about Ragapa being stupid and drunk because of the stupid sauce. So Ragapa tells Gingle, and Gingle tells Pomni to get back on the reservoir. And then Gummy Goo gets all confused of why Pomni even knows his name. And then now it's time for lunch. Then the Gwink Queen comes in and just basically eats all the customers. And then that's where Pomni realizes that Gummy Goo and the crew are leaving. And then in a heartwarming scene, Pomni tells Gummy Goo and his friend to have a nice day. And then after an argument between Shax and Gingle, with Shax not following the directions, Gingle sends him to a creepy room.
Baby, you just need some more.
And then a random commercial comes on with the Spudsy's music playing. And Gingle basically telling Shax that, basically, like, there's dreams, but we all wound up in the fast food restaurant, blah, blah, blah. Then Gingle gives Shax a reevaluation. And this upcoming scene is definitely not a reference to Halloween 3. And then we get another scene with Ragapa and Subo basically just arguing because Ragpa's not even moving that fast. And then due to the sauce, Ragapa starts saying some pretty mean things to both Subo and Gingle.
No offense, but you're kind of annoying when you have your happy mask.
And then Jax looks very pleased as they go in that creepy room. And something feels off about him. Now he seems emotionally much worse now. It seems like he can't control his emotions anymore. So it seems like Jax is going through a lot of things right now, which I'm actually even starting to I start feeling bad about Jax, especially once you get to the 5th episode, but we'll discover that later. Then Gingle starts going insane about, being stuck in his place for how long, and then, the clock interrupts.
You hate me. Is that weird?
You're drunk or something.
And then we get another scene involving Jax having a mini conversation with Pomni, which also gives us more examples of Jax's more soft side. Then Gingle's out there crying and explains to Pomni that she doesn't like the mask she's wearing and, it makes her go insane. And then we get a scene involving Gingo telling Pomni about something about Ragafa that makes us all question about her, if she's even nice at all.
Oh, Ragatha. I love her, but after a while it gets kind of hard to tell how genuine she's actually being.
But before she can truly explain, she goes back to her insane form with the plastic mask. Then Shax just sweets for the night. And then it seems like Shax became depressed after the fast food masquerade, and now he's sad. Then Supal tells Gingo that she'll take Ragafa home. Unfortunately, it seems like Gingo has to stay up and take care of the fast food place all night. This causes her to become very sad and depressed, and she starts getting all glitchy and stuff. But then before she can abstract, Pomni comes in and tells her that she'll take up the fast food place all night and Gingo can go home and rest. This is a very sweet moment. Then Gingo decides to take her plastic mask off, yeet it away, and then finally she gets all happy. She feels free, and she jumps up in the air having a great time. And then she finally feels free, but before she can truly enjoy her moment, she's hit by the truck and she's being sent back to reality. Then Kane gives all the employees a grade, which are all B+, except Kaner because he didn't even go on the adventure. Instead, it seems like he rode a bull or something like that. Then the episode ends on a very sweet moment with Supal telling Gingo that she's still a really good friend to her and she still likes Gingo's drawing and stuff on like the other characters. That's what she thinks of anyways. And then Supal and Gingo walk in peace and meet up with all the others and the episode ends. Just wow. There was a lot to dive into this episode. Overall, I think it's around the same quality as episode 3, but it's definitely my favorite so far. I just feel like each episode constantly gets better and better, and it's definitely continuing with this episode. Let me start with the positives. First of all, I really like the setting of this fast food place. I did hear another YouTuber saying that this setting's a bit too unsettling for the series, but I like how unsettling it is. It just gives off that creepy tone, and it's super relatable. It's definitely the most relatable episode for the show, because I bet a lot of people out there worked at a fast food place and probably didn't like their job. So this episode is definitely relatable. And even though I never worked at a fast food place because, well, I'm too young to work. Well, not now, but I don't even got a job right now, but basically, I bet if I worked at a fast food place, this episode would be relatable. I would probably be miserable there, especially at like McDonald's. I think the animation is also really good. I think it's around the same quality as episode 3, if not even better. Each episode's animation keeps getting better and better, and stays consistent throughout the whole episode. The soundtrack is also really good as usual. But absolutely by far the best part is character development. I think this episode gives us really good character developments to all the characters, except Supal, except Kaner and Pomni, but they got the spotlight in the last episode. But in this episode, we got to get a lot of character development from Shax, Supal, Ragafa, and especially Gingo. I think all those characters especially got a lot of character development, especially Gingo. He needed it the most. He's barely speaked in the last 3 episodes, and now we actually got a lot of character development for her. We start seeing a lot of sides for Shax. We get a soft side, a depressing side, and also a very anger side. Ragafa gets to show off a bit of her more evil side with the stupid sauce. And even though it was just the stupid sauce's fault, it kind of starts giving us a bit more suspicion that Ragafa isn't as nice as we all thought. Supal, we just saw her being grumpy, but in this episode, she's actually really nice. Especially to Gingo, which I do, and it does continue especially in episode 5. And Gingo was a great character to focus on in this episode because it allowed her to express her emotions. I especially liked how she almost attracted at the end, but Pomni saved her life by having her go back to the circus. Another thing I really liked about this episode was I liked how they gave Pomni less screen time. She already has been in the spotlight since the first episode, so I thought it was a great decision to give her a bit less screen time. Don't get me wrong, she still gets a decent amount of screen time, but she definitely doesn't get as much as like Jax, Ragatha, and Gangle and Supple. So I definitely think it was a great decision to step her back a little because we already gave her enough character development. It's time to give more character development to the other characters like Jax, Ragatha, and Supple, and especially Gangle. Same with Kaner. I thought it was a great decision to have Kaner step back because we got a lot of screen time with him in episode 3. So I thought it was a great decision. I also thought the episode had by far the best climax in the series, with Supple being a really good friend to Gangle, supporting her, and same with Pomni. In fact, in the community post, we actually got to see what Gangle's notebook looked like. And her friends were Pomni and Supple, which is interesting because Ragatha is not even on the list, so there's definitely something going on. And finally, this episode's pacing was phenomenal. There was no fast moments, no slow moments, and the episode was just perfectly paced, around the same level as episode 3. Now, do I have any nitpicks? Not really, but I do have a few. First of all, I thought the episode kind of ended abruptly, like another YouTuber said. It does end very fast, which I felt like they could have extended some of the scenes longer to have the episode have more of a satisfying end. And while the ending was great, I did feel like they could have added an extra minute to the episode because it's by far the shortest one in the series, being only around 23 minutes and 12 seconds. And even though it was only a minute shorter than episode 3, I did feel like that runtime kind of had the episode ended a bit abruptly. So I felt like they could have added an extra minute to have the episode end feel more satisfying. I mean, I guess that nitpick can also apply to the episode pacing being too fast. So even though I thought this episode's pacing was phenomenal, maybe it did go by a bit too fast and could have added an extra minute. But outside of that, I didn't really have any other nitpicks for the episode. I thought the episode was perfect, and the nitpicks don't even bother me. Even if the episode does go by a bit fast at the end, I still thought everything was phenomenal. So I'm going to give this episode a 10 out of 10. I do think I prefer episode 4 slightly more than episode 3 just because I watch it. Because I just like watching episode 4 a bit more than 3. So I do think overall it's my favorite episode so far. But we shall wait and see for the last episode. The episode starts off with Supple reading a magazine about parts. Then the characters come back from an adventure that looked like it was about a swamp or something like that. And then it seems like Pomni sees something very weird, but we'll get into that later in the episode. Then the characters explain that they should use the suggestions box again because Supple and Pomni really liked the last adventure. But everyone else?
Very much do not enjoy that anymore. If we ever do anything even close to that again, I'm getting violent, and I'm going to kill Ragatha.
So then Kane does a thing called the White Man round where they go through all types of adventures in the suggestion box, and if they don't like the adventure, they can choose to skip it. So everybody doesn't agree with that, and they just suddenly go on an adventure even though they went one on earlier today. First, we start off in the safari, which is one of Jax's suggestions, where he just basically goes and hunt, the characters, but in their animal forms. Then Supple basically hates this adventure, so she votes to skip it like everyone else, and turns Jax into a vegetarian for the rest of the day, because he just ate Gangle's rubber band.
Democracy sucks.
Then we move on to the next adventure, which is President Pomni, another Jax adventure. We go into the White House with Ragatha and Supple being the guards, with Kaner being the vice president, and Pomni being the president. So they basically plan out their plan and stuff, which, by the way, Pomni doesn't even listen because of the creepy baby lamp. And then Jax sets up basically a bomb that will release some spiders.
Did I pick a bad time?
So Pomni's going to choose the wire to cut off, and then she doesn't wound up picking one. And then we go into Slice and Life anime, which surprised me at first because this adventure wasn't even teased. Like, at all. At least the next adventure was kinda teasing the teaser, but we got no signs of this, so I was very surprised to see this. I was like, what the heck? So, Shax hates this adventure so much that Shax basically mentions the figurine thing again, which basically causes Gangle to skip the adventure. Yeah, I wonder if we're ever gonna find out the figurine thing. Who knows? Or maybe we were better off not knowing because it could have been something really sus. And then they go into stargazing, where basically all they do is just relax and watch the stars. Then Shax strangely starts talking about Gangle and how he actually cares about him and his Max break-in. And it's actually a really heartwarming scene because we never got to see a side of Shax like this. Even in episode 4, he didn't straight up he cared for anyone, but then he basically goes back to his side. Then Ragava says something really bad that causes Shax to get really mad, and then Ragava basically has to apologize. And then with Gangle in the last episode, Shax basically starts talking about Ragava in a way that makes us question about her. I think the scene is really nice, since it gives a lot of character development on Shax, and it makes you like him better. He's not just some bully, he actually has a good side to him. He just can't get it out completely yet. And then Kane sees that the characters are enjoying the adventures, and of course we can't have any of that, so Kane goes into this random adventure that makes no sense at all. And then Subo acts right he's intermission, and then he just stands there, and then they go back into the show. So then now we got to a scene of them in the bar being the next adventure. This is the one Subo suggested, and this is where we got to really learn the characters in this episode. Pomni explained that she used to work at a store, which would probably be somewhere like Walmart. She used to be a superintendent, but she didn't like her job, so she made YouTube videos, but nobody watched them. And then she just wound up in the circus. Shax explains a bit of his story, but we don't really get to know because Subo hates Shax and he thinks he's just making shit up. And then we get Gangle's story. We already learned he used to work at a fast food place, but he also attended art in college, but he dropped off and he wound up in the circus. And then Ragava explains her, which is by far the saddest. She lived in a wealthy family, but her mother was abusive towards her and stuff, so she wound up here. And then we don't get to know Caners because, well, he doesn't remember. And then this is where we start learning a character named Dr. Football, or the Disappearing Guy. Which, by the way, has an incredible appearance. Definitely best character intro. Disappearing Guy was definitely by far the funniest part of this episode. He had me die in like literally when I was in the premiere. And then we get another really good Shax scene with Shax basically apologizing to Pomni about the present thing. And this just gives us more proof that he has a really good side. And they're slowly starting to become friends. So the Pomni x Shax theory is probably becoming really true, especially once episode 6 comes. But it seems like Ragava is very jealous because she's losing a friend, and instead Pomni is, you know, friends with Shax now and not her. Which, I would be with Shax too. I don't want to be with Ragava. Ragava tries to explain a joke, but it never works. And Shax's funny moment is, interesting. I can't even play this clip on YouTube. I mean, I could, but I don't want to. And then it turns out we all learned he's afraid of corn, which I actually been knowing for a while since Gooseworx posted a post saying Shax is afraid of corn. So I thought it was really funny that they finally acknowledged it, that he's afraid of corn. But before we get to learn more about him, Kane interrupts and softball. So the characters team we know is the Big Tops, but then we get evil versions of themselves, like Evil Pomni,
Evil Pomni,
Evil Ragava, Coach Dictator, Evil Shax, which is actually a good version of Shax, and Evil Oarsman instead of Evil Gingo. And then we also get which is that stupid ass. And then we get the best song in the world. And of course, there's Simpy, and Ragfa hates it. And then it turns out Kaner's the coach, and he believes everyone can do it, even if he knows like nothing about it. Ragfa hits the ball good, but Evil Pomni wound up, catching it. And this is where we start seeing anger sides of Ragfa. And of course, Jax becomes friends with Evil Pomni. But then, for some reason, the characters decided to dress Jax in the maid outfit, which is really funny. It turns out Gingo decided to vote, and Jax gets really angry where he tries to rip Gingo apart like he did in the Safari adventure. Jax is up next, but he absolutely hates this, and Subal he hasn't seen him this angry before.
I have never seen you this upset about something.
Jax! Back! I'm gonna kill you when this is over.
Don't worry. I think you look good. I don't want to hear that. I want you dead.
And then after the evil Subal just got hollered at, Jax basically just quits. And this is where things start to get interested. We start seeing a more angry side of Ragfa. Pomni basically explains to her it's okay to be a jerk sometimes, and she definitely takes advantage of that.
Then you just act like you never do anything wrong and everybody loves you, when in reality you just f everything up for everyone else!
Then Ragfa apologizes for bringing that thing up earlier, and, well, something's definitely going on with Jax and Ragfa's relationship. So Pomni asks him if he wants to talk about it, but of course he's in a maid costume, so no. So after a few more rounds, they win, and of course they're super angry, the evil virgins, but they finally get to go back home. But then Jax and Ragfa Jax and Pomni start talking, and it seems like something's going on. They talk about some of the adventures, and then Jax has to show something to Pomni in the hallway. It does seem like Pomni and Jax are starting to become good friends, and the other characters walk away, and it seems like no one truly loves her anymore. And then we get this massive cliffhanger with Dr. Football, or the disappearing guy, just standing there and watching them, and then he just goes away, and then the episode is finally over. Holy shit. This was a lot to explain. I know this episode took a bit longer to come out compared to the others. After all, it was the second longest one in the whole series. But holy crap, was this episode worth the wait? Because, oh my god, this is definitely the best episode of the whole show. Turn off. So, I just said the animation has been improving, but in episode 3 and 4 they looked the same. But in this episode, holy crap, this is by far the this is the best looking episode out of any show. The animation looks so good. It's like Disney level animation good. It looks better than like some of the modern Disney movies. It just looks incredible. It's so bright, colorful, realistic looking, and it just looks really good. Like, this doesn't even look like indie animation anymore. That's how good it looks. And let's be honest, it's crazy how Glitch went from Meadow Runner, which looked pretty ugly, to this. And this is absolutely insane. Second of all, even though episode 4 had a lot of character development, oh my god, we just got to learn so much of the characters in this episode. We got to learn all the characters' backstories, and also I like how they especially dived into Ragfa and Jax, because it definitely seems like they're hiding something from each other. I like how Jax truly shows his good side. At this point, you can definitely tell Jax is not all bad. And he definitely has a good side to him, especially by the end. It definitely looks like Jax and Pomni are starting to become really good friends. And it seems like Jax might be turning completely good in maybe episode 7 or 8, or maybe even episode 6 at earliest. It's so cool how Jax is actually we're learning about Jax's good side, and Jax was already my favorite character, but now I love Jax. I love him like 10 times better than I did in the first 4 episodes. This just made me like Jax a lot more. In fact, it also made me like Ragfa a lot more too. It seems like Ragfa is starting to get jealous that Jax and Pomni are starting to become good friends, and she doesn't really find her place in the circus anymore, because it seems like she doesn't really have any true friends anymore. Her true friend was Pomni, and now she's getting to become friends with Jax, and it seems like she might do something in episode 6 to get Pomni back. And in episode 4, we already thought Ragapha was a pretty unstable character, and it just proves it here. She's definitely an unstable character. It seems like she can't control her emotions anymore. Same with Shaq. He's trying to weigh his good side out, but his other side just keeps having him getting worse. He has anger problems and stuff, but you can tell that he has a good side. And Ragapha, well, she might have a bad side, and maybe Ragapha makes Shaq like this. I also really like Supo in this episode. This is definitely by far my favorite episode with Supo, especially the bar scene. You can tell Supo is actually a really nice person. And I think Supo is 20 times better. Supo was originally one of my, least favorite characters until now. Because now she's in my top 3. I think Supo is that good. It's actually insane how much my growth on Supo became. Because now I think Supo is in my top 3. She is such a good character. I also think it's pretty cool how they take a step back from Kaner and Gangle, because they just got their highlights in episodes 3 and 4, so I thought it was good to focus on Pomni, Supo, Shax, and Ragapha. Since Pomni didn't get that much screen time in episode 4, it made sense to give Pomni a lot more character development in this episode. I also think this is by far the funniest episode. I haven't mentioned funniness ever since episode 2. I think all the episodes had really good jokes, but I wanted to mention it here because, oh my god, this episode adds mix between great moments and really funny moments. This episode is by far the funniest jokes with the disappearing guy, and I like how they made the jokes more mature and a bit more they took a rec of YouTube's community guidelines, which I think is really cool. So yeah, and I like the jokes here, even if some of them are over the top. It's still great. Shaq in the maid costume was super funny. Some of the more inappropriate jokes were great, and more. And you can tell this show is starting to become less kid friendly. There's a bunch of curse in this episode, alcohol, and also language. I also really liked the music bit, Kane's musical bit. I thought it was really cool, and it was also very funny, but also confusing at the same time. I'm still confused by that scene, honestly. I'm not sure if the characters were even in it or not. Or maybe it was just Kane's imagination. I don't know. I also like how this episode did multiple adventures of a variety of adventures. I think it's a nice change in pace where each episode just had one, but this episode has multiple. So I think that's a great idea. The evil version of the characters are also great characters and stuff. And finally, the soundtrack continues to be great as always. Now, do I have any nitpicks with this episode? Not really, but I do have 2 little nitpicks. First of all, I wish the first 3 adventures were a bit longer. Well, actually, it's just the first 2. I thought it was a good idea to keep the anime one short, at least in my opinion, because I'm not a big anime guy, even if I thought it was kind of cool. But I'm not really a big anime guy, so it was fine to keep that one short. But I definitely felt like the Safari one and the Pomni President one should have been a bit 2 minutes longer. But I think it's fine. I think the pacing is still incredible in this episode. It's perfect, and the 25-minute runtime was incredible for this episode. I actually thought it was going to be a 31-minute long episode because Gooseworx said one episode turned out long and this episode had multiple adventures. But I guess I was wrong. If I had to guess the longer episode, it would be episode 8. But I could also see it being episode 6 or 7. Also, I wish the evil versions of the characters got more screen time, especially Coach Dictator, aka Evil Kaner. And also, I wish Evil Shax got more screen time. I also thought it was a bit weird to have Evil Ordman replace Gangle because he didn't really add a lot to this episode. So I thought it was unnecessary to replace Evil Gangle with Oarsman, but I think it's fine. Overall, I really like this episode. Now, it's worth. I thought it was by far worth the wait. It's super good, and I never really done this on the channel, but I'm going to give this episode an 11 out of 10. Yes, this episode's so good. I would give it a 11 out of 10, and it's not just because it's brand new, but Also, but it's just such a good episode. I think it's gonna be hard to beat this episode for a long time. But knowing how improvement the episode's been getting, I could see myself giving episodes a higher ranking than this one. So maybe episode 6 will be a 12 out of 10. Episode 7 will be a 13 out of 10. Episode 8 will be a 14 out of 10, and then episode 9 maybe will be like a 20 out of 10. I don't know, but. Definitely can't wait and see. And like that, we talked about all the episodes in the Amazing Digital Circus so far. Shax, have you been here the whole time? Yes. Why? Because I don't know. Fine, you can wait here. Yay! Just please be quiet. I mean, I've been here for like an hour, so I'm gonna be quiet. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, so that concludes my review on the Amazing Digital Circus. Here's how my episode ranking would go. Number 5, episode 2. Number 4, the pilot. Number 3, episode 3. Number 2, episode 4. And number 1, episode 5. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about is episode 6's release day. Now, I know everyone's saying, but Horror Master, episode 5 just came out yesterday. Why are you already talking about episode 6? Well, it's because I wanted to talk about this. So before I started to record this video, Glitch has posted a post of something about episode 6, saying that we won't keep you guys waiting much longer. So originally I was going to talk about the release date for episode 6. So originally I would have said the episode would have came out in November or December due to a show named Knights of Gwennifer's coming out. Or I don't really know how to pronounce the last word. But Knights of Gwennifer's is basically a new Glitch show coming out. It might come out this year, hopefully. So yeah, but honestly, with that new community post, and that could possibly be a teaser of episode 6, I do think episode 6 will come out now. I think it's going to be coming out in September. I don't think it's going to be coming out in August. I could see it happen, but I think it's going to come out the 3rd week of September earliest, and the 3rd week of October the latest. So I think it's going to come out the 3rd week of September. I could definitely also see it coming out in October. So that's my best guess, but we just have to wait and see. But I don't think this way it's going to be nearly as long as episode 5's. So anyway, that concludes today's video. I hope you guys all enjoyed my video on this show. I wanted to talk about, since everyone else on YouTube is talking about it right now, so I was like, why don't I give an ultimate review on it? Because I haven't seen anyone just do an ultimate review on it. So in conclusion, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and when episode 6 comes out, I will review that. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later. Nah! Move out of the way. I'm gonna be the new host for episode 6 review. We'll see about that. You.